I've always been fascinated by the culture around psychoactive plants in Latin and South America. You know, your Peru, Colombia, Brazil, Chile, Argentina, all those countries, especially within the tribes within those countries. It's not so much a drug to them, it's something more, something, I would say religious to them, but it doesn't really fit that. It's definitely a sacred item, a sacred thing. The ayahuasca, the sapo, the viridis, there's thousands of different plants, which are mainly MAIOs and DMT based, which is the psychedelic, psychoactive ingredient within them. And there are these huge cultures around these tribes that sanctify these incredibly powerful substances. You know, sapo is, I think, 114 times stronger than hospital grade morphine, and it just grows around the houses of these native people in these areas, and they use it in their shamanistic rituals. They don't so much worship the plant as they do use it to worship nature as a whole. It's sort of for them a combining of the human spirit, the human being, and the natural world by taking it and experiencing these mind-altering hallucinations that come from consumption, injection, whatever form of snorting it, however they intake it. That produces these psychedelic effects. That is to them the bridge between what we are and what we either once were or what we're meant to be. These are 1,000-year-old traditions, these rituals, and it has so fascinated me, especially the Peruvian side of things, because the culture in modern day Peru now behind this is probably the strongest, but still is so interesting and true to how it would have been 1,400 years ago. Like how the native people now keep the exact recipes, the exact rituals, the exact moment by moment doings in these almost like sacraments. It's like the Eucharist to them, though the Eucharist does not carry highly potent near opioid effects. But there's a glorification of it, definitely, and I know that sort of my discovery of this whole situation came from that glorification, that Western glorification. So many people now on their gap years go to Colombia and Peru to try out these things. And I would love to, don't get me wrong, I would love to go to Peru, go to a shamanistic ritual, down a bottle of ayahuasca, and off we go. I'd love that. But I know for a fact that this Western glorification is a detriment to the people. It's exploitative to the tribes. It is tribal exploitation. It is the whole white man coming back to these lands to take a certain thing and leave no benefit. These people aren't paying so much for these things. They aren't working for these things. They're just going there on a holiday, gallivanting, taking advantage of hospitality and people, using their sacred substance as a party drug and just whacking out of it and leaving, going back to fucking Cambridge the next week. It's so weird and so offensive, and I would not want to fall into that category, despite how fascinated and willing I am to attend these rituals. And if I did, which I hope I one day can, if I do, I know that I will do my utmost to like uphold like the accepted ritualistic standard. Like I wouldn't want to toe any lines or be disrespectful, because I really respect and love the ideology. It's so interesting and so admirable to me that this is something that happens, and it is something that is verified and is ongoing after thousands of years. It's astounding. But then a part of my brain is like, well, it's a funny one still, because these drugs in the Amazon are the least researched. Ayahuasca has a lot of research, a lot more research than the other alternatives, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, and the tribes people say that the governments and world bodies have no idea what grows out here, which I 100% I'm sure is true. So it's like, how safe, how dangerous, because these people living 3, 4, 5 days from the nearest hospital aren't going to be having, chemical studies based on the drug use. And one thing that comes back to me is, if we'd never discovered opium, would it be just as elusive? Would heroin, these terrible, terrible drugs we know and can confirm as the most damaging and seriously harmful drugs, would that be exactly what this is? And could this just be that? Could it be basically just heroin 2.0 almost? But because it has the allure, it loses some negativity. But discovery, Western imperial discovery, removed heroin's allure. And because that's never happened to the Amazon, and God forbid it ever happens, it's a terrible thing with so much loss and death. I never want that to happen. But if it had happened, would it be a completely different song sheet? Would we know the dangers and never want to do this? But because we don't, I want to. And I want people to, and to keep doing it if it's not seriously damaging, but also if the drug's not damaging, your behaviours and your attitudes can be damaging to the cultures and the traditions. So I know it's a very limited amount of people who actually end up doing it, and not many of them are ever going to see this, but proceed with caution, respect, and goodness. You will receive hospitality in the Amazon. They are some of the most friendliest people, despite popular misconception, and they will aid you if you treat this as the sacred object it is. They aren't trying to hide this from the world. They just don't want to share it with the people who couldn't handle it or don't want to use it for the right purposes. It's not a party drug. It's not something to be taken lightly. It is the most serious, impactful substance we know of, and we barely even understand it.